every ministry in the office of the Prime Minister is corrupted one broke at.
Is that this is a prominent Jamaican company that exports products. They're before the court on a criminal charge of environmental pollution and a case that looks as if it could very well be successfully prosecuted and the company convicted. And that is a situation that could lead to a whole heap of reputational damage for the company here at home and abroad where they export to, and perhaps in places that take environmental issues a whole heap more seriously than we do. But back to the secret deal. So the mediation agreement that NEPA agreed to with Tradewind Citrus was released. And as I said, it's shocking, honestly. No wonder them never want to see it. So the deal now is between NRCA and Tradewinds. And you hear people talk about NRCA, you hear we talk about NEPA. NRCA is a Natural Resources Conservation Authority. It's a statutory body established under the Natural Resources Conservation Act, and it has responsibility for environment planning. Now, the National Environment and Planning Agency, that's NEPA, does the technical and the administrative work of the Natural Resources Conservation Authority. So certainly for the purposes of this issue, you can think of them as one big entity. So according to the deal now, NRCA agrees to immediately withdraw from the prosecution and to try to put an end to the court proceedings, including by using entry of a nolle prosequi. Now, a nolle prosequi is a legal device that the prosecution uses to suspend proceedings, and it's important to say that. A nolle doesn't end proceedings. It suspends a court case, and the prosecution can then go back later on and continue the court proceedings. For instance, if you get more evidence, or if there are witnesses that are now willing to come forward that weren't willing to come forward before. So here's the thing. NEPA had been granted what's called a fiat to prosecute environmental cases by the Director of Public Prosecutions. A fiat means permission to prosecute. So instead of prosecutors from the office of the DPP handling the matter, these cases, including this one, were being handled by permission by NEPA. But acting DPP Claudette Thompson told me on Radio Jamaica's Beyond the Headlines that the DPP's office really didn't know what was going on in this case. She said NEPA wrote to the office of the DPP in October saying it had been recommended, they didn't say by who, that they asked for a nolle, and that they would be back in court on November 27th and that they urgently needed guidance. Now, Ms. Thompson said on November 27th, her office wrote back saying they needed more information. Said they didn't have the file, with the reports and letters and everything that went on in the matter. And she said they can't give guidance if they don't have the background information. And she said the next thing she heard, she was hearing on news that the matter had been disposed of. All right. So here's a look at the agreement itself. Tradewinds agrees to take all reasonable steps to maintain and expand its use of best environmental practices and will actively collaborate with NEPA and community groups in environmental monitoring and developing sustainable solutions for the areas of the Rio Cobre adjacent to its properties. NRCA agreed to release Tradewinds from all claims and lawsuits. It agreed it won't make any claim against Tradewinds. They agreed Tradewinds is not admitting liability, so Tradewinds is not agreeing that they did anything wrong. So here's one of the clauses why I said this agreement is shocking. The parties said that they won't bring or assist in any legal action against each other arising directly or indirectly out of this particular situation. So the government environmental regulator, right, that has primary responsibility for protecting the environment, has agreed in a secret deal that if any citizen decides to sue Tradewinds in association with this pollution incident, that they not help them. No wonder attorney Marcus Goff, who is representing the group Friends of the Rio Cobre, calls this agreement a sellout. It is a disgraceful betrayal of the public trust. That's what it is. That's what I would call it. Then, of course, the even more disgraceful attempt to keep this agreement secret. So look at the agreement again. It says they agree to maintain in strict confidence the existence of this settlement agreement. So we weren't even supposed to know it existed. Wonder if somebody screwed up there. And the fact that we now know what is in it should not blind us to the fact that it's completely out of order that this agreement was made at all. Now, according to Minister Samuda, the government wasn't satisfied that the issue had been handled at the board leadership level with the required standards of transparency and openness. So the board chairman, Weldon Madden, offered his resignation, and the minister says his resignation was accepted. Now, bear in mind, Mr. Madden had told the Gleaner he didn't remember the board making a decision on this. Bear in mind as well, it's Mr. Madden who supposedly signed the secret agreement. A signature said to be his on the signature page, although we don't see any name above the signature. Now tell me something, it makes sense to you that the board chairman doesn't remember anything about this issue? An agreement to make a secret deal with a company accused of environmental pollution, and the board chairman doesn't even remember it? A secret deal that must have sent up red flags for anybody who looked at it, right? Tell me, what is happening here? What is really happening here? Was the board chairman made a scapegoat? Is he being thrown under the bus? Now, bear in mind, Mr. Samuda says he agrees that the criminal case should have been withdrawn because he says NEPA told him that the oil spill was largely confined to Tradewind's property, but that some seepage occurred into the Rio Cobre, but that the extent of the seepage wasn't significant enough to cause a fish kill or require an environmental impact assessment. They're saying it's not that 0 fish were killed. They were saying whole heap of fish never dead, therefore it doesn't rise to the level of being called a fish kill. He also says that a determination was made by NEPA that there wasn't any basis for compensation or extensive consultation with stakeholders, and that Tradewind Citrus assumed full responsibility for the cleanup, and the cost of the cleanup was a whole heap more than the fines under the Wildlife Protection Act, which amounts to a maximum of $1